Welcome back to another video. We're out here once again walking in Fresh Kills Park. For those who don't know, this is on top of Staten Island's dump. The two large mounds there and there make up the world's largest man-made structure. I believe that's still true. I think it eclipsed the Great Wall of China. I'm also like 50% sure that you can see the Staten Island dump from space. It is that big. And the park is actually that big. It's a really nice, surprisingly attractive space. But that's not what we're here for today. Today, we're here to talk about the Mobula 8 with the O3 air unit on top of it. The Mobula 8 is an 85mm whoop style quad that uses about 2-inch props. If those numbers are wrong, the correct numbers are on screen. Happy Model's Mobula 8 comes in a few different flavors, and they're all just basically different video systems on top. There's obviously the analog version, there's an HD0 version, there's a walk snail version, and then there's the O3 version. And the O3 version is sold both as one completely put together as a bind and fly, and one that they call the O3 Lite version, not to be confused with Flywoo's O3 Lite. The Lite version basically comes without an air unit. So if you already have an O3 air unit that you can put on the quad, you can basically buy the quad 99% built, you just toss the air unit on it and you're good to go. I personally went with the O3 Lite because I already had an O3 air unit that I could spare for this quad. It was a really easy setup. It comes with the cable to plug in the O3 air unit, already plugged into the flight controller. You really just snap your air unit into the included cage, screw the camera into the camera mount, and then install 4 screws around the outside to bolt the camera cage and O3 air unit cage to the rest of the quad. If you already have an O3 air unit, I would highly recommend the Lite version. It's super simple to set up, and you don't have to spend an extra, what, 230 bucks or so for a new O3 air unit. As always, I like to start out with what I liked about the Mobula 8 with the O3 air unit. And first and foremost, a lot of this is gonna cross over with the O3 air unit itself. Because this quad uses ELRS and it uses the O3 air unit, range and penetration are both phenomenal. Even though you use the little whip antennas for the O3 air unit, it really doesn't make a difference. The range and penetration are both fantastic. And honestly, it's what I would expect from any quad equipped with an O3 air unit. And again, ELRS works as it normally does. Super low latency, super good connectivity, and the range and penetration are both as you would expect. On a package this small, I don't know that there's anything better than the O3 for range and penetration. It does come with its drawbacks, but we're gonna get into those in the cons. I feel like one of the biggest positives for this quad is the fact that it is a DJI whoop. In the past, we really haven't had any options when it comes to DJI and little tiny drones. And now we have the newbie drone version, which is a 75mm. We have the Flywoo, where they're using a light version, where they're stripping out the O3 air unit to basically its lightest possible weight. And then we also have the Mobula 8, which flies pretty well despite its weight, and is technically a tiny whoop. It would qualify for iGow if you wanted to compete with it. On that same vein of this being a tiny quad with DJI, it is also incredibly silent. When compared to something like the Avata, the noise is like a half. Compared to most other tiny whoops as well as like bigger drones like 5-inch drones, this is a pretty quiet quad to fly. And if you want to fly it around a park or somewhere else where you need some discretion when it comes to the amount of noise you're making, this one definitely works. It's pretty quiet, especially considering what the camera quality it's carrying. Like any of the other Happy Model products, they generally do a really good job with both the build quality as well as the part selection. The flight controller is their standard Whoop X Lite, capable of running 1 or 2S. This quad obviously runs on 2S because the O3 air unit needs it. The motors are also pretty stout. I believe they're 1102, number over here if it's not 1102, but it provides enough thrust to get this thing up and moving. You can do your standard flips, rolls, climbs really well, handles some light breezes, but does get knocked around a little bit in wind because it's not super heavy. It's pretty light and it's got a lot of surface area, so it does get pushed around a little bit. Durability is also really good when it comes to the Mobula 8. Like with many other Happy Model products that I've had, the Mob 7 and Mob 6, the frame is very durable so far in my experience. Had a couple of good crashes, nothing really to report, just some scuffs and scrapes here and there. It feels really stiff, feels really strong. The battery compartment is tucked up nicely underneath. The overall design and build of this thing is pretty solid. And then this also really comes down to the O3 air unit as well, but the video quality coming out of here is pretty good. Like with any other O3 air unit equipped quads, the dynamic range still leaves something to be desired. DJI really needs to figure out their software on that one and make it so it works a little better, but I don't think you can get much better video quality out of something in this weight class. At right around 100 grams all up, this thing gets 4K footage and stabilized if you want, or you can throw it into GyroFlow, and the results are frankly pretty spectacular. When it does get super bright out like it is today, jello can be an issue, especially if you don't run ND filters. I would recommend getting Snap-on ND filters. Even if you don't need it for the better image quality, I would highly recommend getting ND filters or at least a lens cover, because if you do scratch the lens, you have to replace the whole camera because it is the O3, and you cannot buy camera lenses, which is super frustrating. But it kind of comes with the territory. When it comes to the cons of this quad, a lot of them really are the same as you would get with any other O3 air unit. I mentioned before, the exposure or auto exposure isn't the greatest. Same with the dynamic range. There's a lot left to be desired. You also have the issue that the camera lens is very large and it's non-replaceable. So if you scratch it, you do have to buy a new camera, which is like 110 bucks. Not cheap. It does add to the overall cost, so this is pretty expensive for a Whoop, sitting right around 400 bucks, but most of that is the O3 air unit at $230 just on its own. The reason I bring up cost as a pretty big negative is the O3 air unit is very exposed on this Whoop. It sits right on top. The camera lens has pretty much no protection except for the hood that DJI has on it already. So if it goes down in a crash, there's a good chance the camera and the O3 air unit itself are going to make contact with the ground, and there's a good chance that's going to cause some damage. The last con for this quad is really the weight. The weight of this, again, just being over 100 grams, it is a bit porky. So while it can do flips, rolls, power loops, split S's, it does them all pretty well. When you do bigger dives, you do start to find some of its limitations. Like you will start to get some washout in the rear end, which is not confidence inspiring at all. Honestly, it scared the crap out of me the first time I did a bigger dive with this quad. It is not overly heavy, and I think if you are more aggressive with the tune, switch the props to props in, maybe switch to multi-blade props, switching up to the 4 blades instead of the 3 blades, you probably could get rid of a lot of the negative behaviors of it. But with 2S, it's really hard to fight the amount of weight that this quad has. And speaking of 2S, my final con for this is the minimum voltage that the O3 air unit needs is 7 volts. And if you drain a 2S down to less than 3.5 volts per cell, you will have the air unit brown or black out. This means you lose all video, and it's not a good experience. Happened to me twice. Just wasn't paying attention, was having a ton of fun, because the flight time is right around 2.5 minutes without too much worry about running out of battery. So it does last for a while, and you can forget that you have to be really thinking about landing as soon as you see that low battery warning pop up. On more than one occasion, I've kind of ignored or forgot or kept pushing it, had the air unit brown or black out, and had to figure out how to get it home or onto the ground without just crashing it. Because again, that air unit is super exposed and is susceptible to damage. While I don't think this quad is for everybody, and I do think if you have the option to go with Walk Snail, HD0, or analog, those are the best versions of the Mobula 8. They just fly a whole lot better. They're a lot more capable and a lot more fun, especially if you're freestyling. For the O3 version, this is what I'd really recommend for somebody who either flies only DJI, because this really is probably one of the better options when it comes to a Whoop sized quad. I know Newbie Drone also has their 75mm O3. Flywoo also has a small O3 build, and I think any of the 3 of them are an excellent shot if you want a Whoop that runs the DJI O3 air unit. I do think all of these are really awesome because we've really never had this kind of Whoop before with DJI. Even with the Vista, the options really were pretty limited, and honestly, most of them were pretty compromised in a whole lot of ways, not just weight, in shape and build and quality of part choice. Happy Model has really nailed this one, and I really do recommend this as a Whoop for somebody who's flying only DJI. And you do need the goggles too, or the goggles V2, or the goggles Integra. Any of those are great shots with this to fly. The second person I would recommend the O3 Mobula 8 for is somebody who bought a DJI Avata and wants to try something a little smaller or a little different, this thing flies fantastic. It really is like a baby Avata. And if you want something a little different, something to fly in tighter spaces like indoors, well, I think this is still a little big for flying indoors. You still can manage it, and it makes a whole lot less noise than the Avata. So if you bought an Avata and want something a little different, this is probably a good step sideways for you. And last, if you're a professional and you need a 4K Cinewhoop for really, really tight and compromised environments, I think this could be a great addition to your kit. It'll allow you to get in spaces where you never could get with a traditional Cinewhoop, and you can still get some pretty great footage, especially if you use ND filters. With all that said, I really like the Mobula 8. I think it's a fantastic flying quad, pretty much no matter which variety you get. Obviously, you just understand if you're buying the DJI O3 version, it's gonna be a little heavier, it's gonna be a little less durable, a little more fragile, and if you do crash and crack that camera, it's gonna be a lot more expensive. But when comparison to the other options for DJI, this is it. Like, this is the best, I think, whoop that I have flown with DJI on it since I started flying FPV. And I've tried stuff from iFlight, Beta FPV, a whole bunch of other little whoop style quads, and never really found anything that flies great that you could say take to a park and just kind of cruise around. I really think this is worth to consider, especially if you're only rocking DJI. It is a great little whoop, and if you're a professional and you fly cinematically, definitely something that you should add to your toolkit, because it'll do things your other quads just can't, just because it's physical size and the amount of noise that it makes. It really is a fantastic little package. Happy Model, I think, really nailed it with this one. I can't wait to try eventually the newbie drone version as well as the Flywoo version. The Flywoo version, I think, is the most interesting to me because it is going to be the lightest, because they take off the case, they decase the camera. They really do take about 17 grams out. And when you're talking about a quad that really is in that 100-gram range, you're talking about 10 to 20% of the weight taken out of the quad. And that really wraps up this review of the Mobula 8. As always, leave me a comment down below. Have you flown any of the other variants that have the O3 Air unit on a whoop style quad, the Flywoo, the newbie drone, or even the Mobula 8? What has your experience been? Good, bad, and if you're considering one of these, which is currently your top contender? I'm just curious. Let me know. And actually, if you've also flown the Flywoo naked version of the O3 Air unit, really curious, what has your experience been? And did you do the build your own, or did you buy it pre-built? Also, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button down below. It helps this channel grow. It's really appreciated. Like this video, hit the thumbs up if you like this video, and as always, thank you for joining me. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.